Billionaire called the waitress, too dumb to serve, then she answered him in 9 languages. The billionaire slammed his hand on the restaurant table. Are you too dumb to understand English? The entire restaurant went silent. The young black waitress standing in front of him lowered her eyes. She looked embarrassed. She looked nervous, and the billionaire smiled as if he had won. But then she calmly looked up and answered him, not in English, but in French, then Spanish, then Mandarin, then Arabic, then German, then Portuguese, then Japanese, then Russian, and finally, Italian. By the time she finished speaking 9 languages, the billionaire was no longer smiling. Because the woman he had called, too dumb to serve, was the only person in the entire restaurant who could save his company from collapse. Her name was Maya Thompson. She was 24 years old. She worked 6 days a week at one of the most expensive restaurants in New York City. The restaurant was famous for its luxury meals, celebrity guests, and billionaire clients. But Maya did not care about the expensive cars outside. She did not care about designer watches or private jets. She cared about getting through each shift, paying her rent, helping her mother, and making sure her younger brother could stay in college. Every morning before work, Maya visited her mother at a small rehabilitation center. Her mother had suffered a serious illness 2 years earlier. Maya had become the person who handled everything: bills, medicine, groceries, and hope. She never complained, even when she was exhausted, even when her feet hurt, even when customers treated her like she was invisible. One evening, a black luxury car stopped outside the restaurant. A tall man in an expensive suit stepped out. His name was Richard Blackwell. He was one of the youngest billionaires in America. He owned a global technology company with offices in more than 20 countries. His company had recently launched a major international project. But there was one problem. The project was failing, and Richard was furious. He entered the restaurant with 3 executives. Everyone immediately recognized him. The manager rushed forward. "Mr. Blackwell, welcome." Richard barely looked at him. "I want the private dining room." "Of course, sir." The manager quickly led him upstairs. Maya was assigned to serve the table. Before entering the room, the manager pulled her aside. "Please be careful." Maya looked confused. "With what, Mr. Blackwell, is difficult?" Maya nodded. "I can handle difficult." The manager sighed. "Just don't make mistakes." Maya entered the room with a tray. Richard was sitting at the center of the table. His 3 executives were speaking quietly about the company. Maya placed the menus down. "Good evening. My name is Maya, and I'll be taking care of you tonight." Richard looked at her, then looked at her uniform, then looked back at her. "You?" Maya smiled politely. "Yes, sir." He glanced toward the manager. "Is this the best you could do?" The room became uncomfortable. Maya remained calm. "I'll do my best to make your evening comfortable." Richard laughed. "Your best?" One executive looked away. Richard leaned back in his chair. "Do you even understand what we're discussing?" Maya blinked. "I'm sorry. We're discussing an international business deal." Richard pointed toward the door. "Not something someone like you would understand." Maya stayed silent. She had heard comments like that before. People often assumed that because she was a waitress, she had no education, no intelligence, no ambition. They saw her uniform. They never saw the books in her bedroom. They never saw the university applications she had submitted. They never saw the hours she spent studying after work. They never saw the 9 languages she had learned over the years. Her father had been an immigrant. He had always told her, if you can speak to someone in their language, you can reach their heart. Maya had taken his words seriously. She had learned languages one by one: English, French, Spanish, Mandarin, Arabic, German, Portuguese, Japanese, and Italian. She was not fluent in every language at a perfect academic level. But she could communicate, understand, translate, and connect. Richard had no idea. He only saw a waitress. Dinner began. The conversation became more heated. Richard's executives were discussing a major overseas partnership. A contract worth hundreds of millions of dollars was about to collapse. The problem was a misunderstanding between international teams. A translated message had been interpreted incorrectly. Richard was blaming everyone. "This is ridiculous." He slammed a folder on the table. Our Japanese partners think we broke the agreement. One executive replied, Sir, we translated everything correctly. Richard stood. Then why are they walking away? Nobody answered. Maya was quietly pouring water. She heard the name of the Japanese company. Then she heard a phrase in the document. Her hand stopped. She looked at the folder. Excuse me, sir. Richard turned. What? I'm sorry, but may I ask something? Richard laughed. You. Maya remained polite. Yes. Richard crossed his arms. Go ahead. Maya pointed at the document. The phrase you translated as final refusal can also mean request for clarification, depending on the context. The room went silent. Richard stared at her. What? Maya continued. In Japanese business communication, the wording is indirect. If the sentence is translated literally, it sounds like they rejected the contract. She paused. But if the sentence is read in the original context, they are asking for one more meeting. One executive immediately opened his laptop. Wait. He began checking the original message. His face changed. Oh my God. Richard turned. What? The executive looked up. She's right. Maya stepped back. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Richard stared at her. For the first time that evening, he was no longer looking at a waitress. He was looking at a person who had just identified a problem his entire executive team had missed. But his pride would not let him admit it. He pointed at her. You speak Japanese. Maya nodded. Yes. Richard scoffed. Really? Maya replied in Japanese. The executive sitting at the table froze. Then Maya repeated the explanation in English. Richard stared. Okay. He pointed toward another document. What about this? Maya looked at it. That section is in Mandarin. Richard raised an eyebrow. Can you read it? Maya answered him in Mandarin. The room went completely silent. One executive slowly stood. You speak Mandarin? Maya nodded. Yes. Richard's expression became uncomfortable. French. Maya answered in French. Spanish. She answered in Spanish. Arabic. She answered in Arabic. German. German. Portuguese. Portuguese. Russian. Russian. Then Richard stared at her. Japanese. Maya answered again. Finally, he asked. Italian. Maya smiled. And answered in Italian. 9 languages. 9 times. The billionaire who had called her too dumb to serve now sat completely speechless. But the biggest surprise had not yet happened. The executive suddenly rushed toward Maya. Wait. He looked at her carefully. Your name is Maya Thompson. Yes. Did you attend the Global Language and International Relations program at Columbia? Maya nodded. Yes. The executive looked at Richard. She was the top student in her class. Richard slowly turned toward Maya. What? Maya looked uncomfortable. I had a scholarship. The executive continued. She was offered a position at an international consulting firm. Richard stared. Then why are you working here? Maya hesitated. My mother became ill. The room became quiet. I needed flexible hours. She looked down. And my younger brother was still in school. Richard said nothing. Maya continued. So I chose a job where I could work nights. The billionaire suddenly felt ashamed. He had looked at her uniform and decided he knew her entire life. But he knew nothing. Then the situation took another unexpected turn. Maya's phone began ringing. She looked at the screen. Her expression changed. She answered. Hello. Everyone watched her face. Maya's eyes filled with fear. What happened? She listened. Then her face became pale. I'm coming. She hung up. Richard noticed. Is everything okay? Maya tried to smile. Yes. But her voice shook. Richard stood. What happened? Maya hesitated. My mother fell. Richard's expression changed. Is she hurt? I don't know. Maya grabbed her bag. I need to go. The manager appeared at the door. Maya, you still have tables downstairs. Richard turned toward him. She's leaving. The manager looked nervous. But, Richard interrupted. Call someone else. Maya looked at Richard. I'm sorry. Richard shook his head. Don't apologize. She hurried toward the door. But then Richard stopped her. Wait. Maya turned. Richard took out his phone. He called his assistant. Get a car ready. Maya shook her head. No, sir. I can take the subway. Richard looked at her. It's late. I can manage. He shook his head. No. Maya stared at him. Richard continued. Tonight, You helped save a business deal worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Maya replied, I didn't do it for money. Richard looked at her. I know. He paused. That's exactly why I'm helping. A car took Maya to the rehabilitation center. Richard did not go with her. He simply made sure she got there safely. But the next morning, something unexpected happened. Maya arrived at work. She expected to be fired. Instead, the restaurant manager called her into the office. Richard Blackwell was there. Maya froze. Good morning. Good morning, she replied. Richard stood. I owe you an apology. Maya said nothing. Richard continued. I judged you. Yes, Maya replied. He nodded. I was arrogant. Yes. He almost smiled. You're very honest. I try to be. Richard looked at her. Yesterday, I called you dumb. Maya nodded. You did. I was wrong. Maya remained silent. Richard took a deep breath. I want to offer you a job. Maya looked surprised. What kind of job? International Communications Director. Maya stared at him. I'm a waitress. Richard shook his head. No. He looked directly at her. You are a multilingual communications expert who happens to be working as a waitress. Maya did not answer. Richard continued. The position comes with a salary, benefits, and flexible hours. Maya looked down. What about my mother? We'll work around your schedule. And my brother? Your education will not be a problem. Maya looked up. What does that mean? Richard smiled. It means I want to pay for his remaining tuition. Maya immediately shook her head. No. Richard looked surprised. No, I can't accept that. Why? Because I don't want charity. Richard nodded. I understand. He paused. So don't think of it as charity. Maya looked confused. Then what is it? Richard replied. An investment. Maya stared at him. An investment? Yes. He smiled. Your brother is studying engineering, correct? Yes. Then I'm investing in a future engineer. Maya looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes began to fill with tears. Richard lowered his voice. Someone once helped my family when we had nothing. Maya looked surprised. Richard continued. My father was not always rich. When I was young, we lost almost everything. One teacher believed in me when nobody else did. That teacher changed my life. He looked at Maya. I never forgot it. Maya wiped away a tear. Then why did you become so cruel to people? Richard looked down. For the first time, he had no answer. Finally, he said, maybe I forgot where I came from. Maya smiled gently. Then maybe yesterday was a good reminder. Richard nodded. It was. Months later, Maya began working at Richard's company. She became one of the most valuable people on his international team. But she never forgot the restaurant. Every Friday evening, she returned there. Not as a waitress, but as a volunteer. She helped new employees learn languages. She helped immigrant workers understand customers. And she created a free language program for people who could not afford expensive classes. Richard eventually joined her. One evening, he stood in front of a group of young workers. He looked nervous. Maya smiled. Go ahead. Richard took a breath. Then he spoke his first sentence in French. The workers applauded. His second sentence in Spanish was better. His Mandarin was terrible. Everyone laughed. Even Richard laughed. And for the first time in years, he was not trying to be the smartest person in the room. He was simply trying to learn. Maya watched him and smiled. Because she had learned something too. Sometimes, people who hurt others are not always hopeless. Sometimes, they simply need someone brave enough to show them the truth. And sometimes, the person society ignores is the person carrying the greatest gift. Maya had been called too dumb to serve. But she had never needed a billionaire to tell her who she was. She already knew. She was intelligent. She was hardworking. She was compassionate. And she was strong. But her greatest strength was not speaking 9 languages. Her greatest strength was this. Even after being insulted, she still chose kindness. And that kindness changed more than one business deal. It changed a billionaire. It helped a family. And it reminded an entire company that intelligence is not always found in expensive offices or impressive titles. Sometimes, it is standing quietly behind a restaurant table, carrying a tray, paying bills, caring for a sick parent, studying late at night, and still finding the strength to smile at someone who has forgotten how to be kind. So never judge a person by their uniform. Never measure intelligence by someone's job. And never assume you know a person's story just because you have seen one chapter. Because the person you look down on today may be the very person who saves you tomorrow. And sometimes, the greatest lesson a billionaire can learn comes from the waitress he thought was too dumb to serve.